Okay, well, let's go ahead and get moving here. So, Dee Dee, I did not see any notice of citizen input. Was there anything that came in?
I didn't get anything this time.
Okay. So we can move past item number 2 there. It must be Janelle joining on the phone. So next up, item number 3 is our consent agenda. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. I think if it's Jay talking, you're muted too.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Jay.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Catherine. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, well, let's go ahead for a vote. I'll just kind of go around the order I see you. So, Jenice.
Aye.
Jay.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
And Janelle.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Okay, item number 4, our district reports information. And first up here is our superintendent report. So Mr. Marshall's with us this evening. So we're looking for an update on things we've been working on this week and probably some updates to our discussion last week as well, right?
Sure, all sorts of things. Couple of things right off. So as you're well aware, we're in the middle of our process for finding a replacement for Director of Finance. My initial goal was to hope to bring someone to this meeting, but we're close, but not that close. So updated target of by the end of this week, beginning of next week at the latest. We're just working through some of the details and having those conversations. And so the intent would be to be able to bring that forward to you next week, or at least share that information and at the next meeting have it voted on. So technical issue with, as you're aware, Division 22, we do those compliance reviews in the fall. Those are submitted to ODE, they go to the board. And actually one of the first calls I had when I came on board was from the Department of Education. And there were several areas that needed to be revisited on our last compliance review. And all but one have been completed or were completed prior to me coming on board. So the remaining one, and it's just a technical issue with, so our social studies adoption that I believe was presented last spring for adoption this last fall. And so Dee Dee updated me and said, you know, there was presentations shared and the adoption a recommendation was brought forward. And so what happens is that the state releases a list of materials that are essentially like on the pre-approved list. So if a district adopts those, they don't need to do anything else other than have it approved by the board and of course go through the formal review process. But districts aren't required to adopt only what's on the list. There is an independent adoption process, which as I understand it, it sounds like all or most of that happened. Through this, where essentially you have to check and make sure that you know, all of the standards are being addressed and include that in your review. But it does not appear that that information was specifically and overtly addressed in the board report and the board request. So what I'm doing is trying to track down that, is just confirm that one, that independent review process happened. And then if it did, I will just bring that forward to you next month and affirm that. And then by doing that and presenting it to you, then we're fully compliant. If it hasn't happened, then most likely what we'd need to do would be to do that procedural piece when the teachers are back. So call the folks who were involved in that and just gather that info and work through that really quickly. It's just it's a double check. So
now this is ringing a bell, and I know you probably know the answer, David, but did we not go through this once already? This feels like we've kind of been through this road, like the board, it was adopted and then we had to go back and redo something already.
And so I need to do some more digging on that. So this is based on my most recent call with ODE saying they still need that. So if that's happened, and then I'll get with Dee Dee tomorrow and we'll do some searching. So all we need is a record of it. Obviously it's expected that it happened. If it did, then we just affirm that it did. If it didn't, then we make sure that it does happen. Okay. And then obviously set up stuff in the future.
Yeah,
so
just as you bring this up, I know I believe it's been I can't say it was all filed properly, but
I remember that too.
Yeah, do you? Okay, so I feel like we've been down this road already.
Okay,
Sometime.
okay. So that was just an update on where we are on that. That, I mean, regardless, it's very straightforward to address, and then ensure that future adoptions, that if we're going to look beyond the state approved list, that just make sure that we build in that to the process. That one, that happens, and then two, that's included as it's being presented and moved forward by the board. So not a big issue, but once that's formally addressed, then we'll be fully compliant with Division 22 standards, at least as of our last go around with that. So a little bit of good news. We received word today that the ESSER CARES Act funding, of which the district is slated to receive about $342,000. Our application was formally approved. And so that's supplemental money that we can use for essentially COVID-related expenses that we've had, as well as expenses in the future. Some general things that we've planned with that are, we know we've already ordered some additional cleaning equipment and specialized cleaning equipment like the room foggers and misters and electrostatic things that will make our disinfecting process much, much more time efficient as well as thorough. So we're doing things like that. We're also making technology purchases, specifically and most recently with buying some additional Chromebooks so that we're ready for the start of school and we have those on hand, and that we have the capacity that we need should we need to shift to a full distance ed model as part of the process this year. So Chris and I got together and we're moving that order forward. That's not all we anticipate getting, but we knew we needed that. So we're pushing that order forward. And then the only other specific item that we're looking at this moment with that is adding some time with the nursing assistant staff, just to be able to have some more capacity with all of the procedures and the record keeping that we will have to do for the start of school. So those are some of the things those monies are targeted to. And so those will help us greatly, and then they also allow us to potentially conserve more general funds as well for future needs. So that was really nice to have that wrapped up. Any questions about that?
David, I did have a question. Did we get the majority of our Chromebooks back that we had lent out, or how did we fare there?
And I don't know if Chris has any more detailed information, but I think as I'm hearing, it sounds like reasonably well. So there's obviously some loss and some damage, but it doesn't sound like it was substantial. And we have a cycle anyway where they will typically last 3 or 4 years before they're not practical anymore. So there was the need to get the Chromebooks anyway. We just wanted to make sure we got that order in so that we had them and that we were ready for the start of the school year.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, if you want me to follow up with specific numbers, I can, but it just my general impression after visiting with the building staff is that it was not a high level of loss. We still do have some, like the students who did the special ed summer school, they kept theirs. So we still do have some out as well.
Yeah, I don't need to know numbers.
Okay.
I just wanted to have a general sense of how we did.
Yeah, we didn't lose them all. So. So another somewhat positive news is so that the special session, I can't remember if the date's set yet, but it's going to be coming up pretty quickly. And the news that we're hearing with school funding is the intent for the full $9 billion state school fund amount, which again, that's what our budget was built on. So that's hugely positive news. And so we have a balanced budget. We have appropriate level of staff to match that budget. And so that's a real big positive. The other funds are not yet determined, but what's being considered is a likelihood of full Measure 98 funding, and then partial Student Success Act, Student Investment Account funding, somewhere potentially in the range of about a third of the originally planned amount. So given all the rest of the considerations, that's pretty good news. The state of Oregon is actually in a pretty decent place with, as I understand it, with the general numbers will require dipping into reserves only a little bit. Because the big question and the looming question is not next year, but it's the next biennium and the financial impact of this crisis and the long-term piece. So, so we're not completely out of the woods yet, but at least, you know, looking at next year, we're not looking at the possibility of a significant level of cuts that we were just a month or two ago. So that's a real positive. And then one more note before get into just the summary of the Ready Schools Safe Learners, to let you know that, and you might already be aware that our marching band will be at this point participating in the Azalea Parade, the Azalea Festival. We had a lot of conversations about that, and really landed on, you know, that we feel we can do it safely following the physical distance guidelines. The band teacher Corey's visited has a, you know, just like we do with the sports practice, has a set plan in place for the participants, and it's voluntary for those students. It requires, you know, parental consent, but we felt that we wanted to have that as an optional opportunity for the students. Nancy is working with Corey to develop essentially a press release, just to try and be proactive about the communication, saying, yes, they're going to be out there doing it, and here's why. And it's optional, and we feel that especially because it's outside, that they can do it with a relatively low level of risk. So I just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. So any questions about that?
No.
So, and as a side note, that the sports practices, I've been hearing positive reports, and certainly the kids are happy to be able to be out. And sometimes, like I said, from my window, I can see the softballers out there, and they have the plans and guidelines in place. And as far as we're moving ahead, we're good to continue doing that at this point in time. A future discussion topic that we've already started is the fall sports is undecided as of this moment from OSAA and the state level as to whether we will be able to have it. If there's the eventuality that we don't, we will be looking towards what opportunities can we provide our students, even if it's something like continuing with what we're able to do in the summer, giving them that activity, giving them the connection to the sport. So that's going to be a big upcoming topic as those decisions are made at the state level. But our intent is to look for every opportunity to provide those experiences and opportunities for the students. The coaching monies and stipends are already in the budget, so that's not an area that we would want to necessarily say, well, if we don't have a season, we're going to cut everything. It's looking how could we do it differently to provide some other opportunities.
You know, if OSAA, I was going to ask if OSAA does that decision, is this free to maybe schedule something with Gold Beach, or what kind of?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's unknown at the moment, but that would be, if OSAA doesn't have a season on the technical end with just the athletics rules, yes, we could schedule our own event. So then it's the question of, is that allowable under whatever county and state guidelines? So, but that's another consideration. The discussions that I've heard indirectly, you know, at the state level are kind of similar to that. Of if there is, if certain sports are allowed to compete, we're not likely going to be sending kids all across the state to do those competitions. And so you would look at one, you know, staying more local. Obviously, that presents us some challenges. Or two, if the kids are going somewhere else, it would most likely need to be to another county or area that has the same level of, you know, in their same phase. So we wouldn't send our kids to like Portland, who's in phase 1 for an event that, you know, or we wouldn't have those kids come here, but looking at other, you know, kind of more local based options. So those are being discussed, but again, no decision's been made.
Yeah.
David, I'm sorry, going back a little bit with the ban, because I just thought of something. The requirement that went into effect today with outdoor events.
Yeah.
So will some of our band members, obviously you can't wear a mask playing like
Correct.
the flute or the trombone, but are the ones that can wear masks, are we going to implement that, or how are we?
Well, that's only if they can't maintain social distancing. So depending on, I would assume that the band director's hopefully having them maintain social distancing.
Yeah, and that's the plan. And we also talked. A very great guy. It was really neat to visit with Corey. We also had the conversation about the pre and the post of making sure you're working with the students of their arriving, and then when the event is done, that they're not going off and hugging and holding hands with their friends of that. So that we structure that as much as we can. But yeah, my understanding as well with Janelle is that that's the plan with the 6 foot social distancing. Corey also had some research thought that he talked about in terms of the low likelihood of transmission with wind instruments, just because of how the air goes through the instruments and that sort of thing. So so the consensus was that that's not a significant risk factor, and so we wanted to make that an optional opportunity for our students.
I appreciate you allowing that, giving them the opportunity and giving them the option. I heard a kid today talking about participating, and she was pretty excited. So
yeah, especially with what they've been missing. That's our goal is through this conversation is anything that we can do, we want to provide those opportunities. And again, like if we're prohibited from having a season, we're going to be looking hard for other options on how to give kids, as close to those type of opportunities as possible. That's at the forefront of this work. And so it's not going to be, well, we don't do it, let's just do nothing. I think we need to be as proactive as we can with looking for opportunities to connect with kids, just as extracurriculars are, even in normal times, a great connector to the district and the system for kids and families. And so we need to look at ways to continue those connections, even under the current restrictions and guidelines.
Yeah, I think it's also a great opportunity for us to role model. I know it's going to be hard for the kids to get their mindset that 6 feet, but it's a opportunity for kids to see, okay, we can come together safely and role model what that looks like. I think this is something the community is going to be looking at closely, because I know that there are lots of concerns in the community. So I think this is a great opportunity.
In a number of ways, I agree.
Yeah.
So in general, where we are with the Ready Schools, Safe Learners, as you folks participated in the listening session last week, I think that went well. We got some really good input from that. I honestly, it's a priority to find more ways to connect with the broader community. As I understood it and what was reported to me afterwards is that a lot of the folks on that listening session were staff members, which is great. The more input we get from staff members, and many of our staff members are also parents, but I also want to hear from the families who don't have staff members with the district. That's an important component, and so we're brainstorming and sharing with you, and thank you, Jay, for sending me the pool schedule. So I'm going to give that a try. Reach out to the pool manager, and it's good as I haven't been in the pool yet, so I have to admit that, and show up there, see if there's any, if that's a viable venue just to be available to have those conversations and get input. I'm also looking at putting together like the idea of walking meetings, and maybe even doing it on the track where you can do the physical distancing, but just be outside and walking around and say, I'll be here walking around from this time to this time. And so hopefully some folks will maybe join and have that be another way to have some more conversations and to get some more input. So any ideas from you, and then things that the board might be able to do to reach out to the broader community to continue with that input. That's going to be a real critical piece, is to hear as many voices as we can on that process. So those are going to be some things forthcoming, and I'm also going to be stretching out of my comfort zone and working with Nancy on putting together a video update as well. I don't look forward to it, and I've asked Nancy, said, encourage me and push me to do this, And so we'll be working on that next week as just you know, another way to be able to communicate with the community as well as to solicit input. I have been receiving not a flood, but certainly a regular steady stream of input from the community, emails, questions, and comments. So I want to thank the folks who have submitted that. We have, let's see, key things. So next, was it Tuesday, the 21st, is when the next Department of Education update is scheduled to be released. And there's also a statewide superintendent's meeting then. So after that, I should have some more information. It's very unknown at this point whether it'll be a substantial update or just additional clarifications. The June 30th was primarily just additional clarifications. There wasn't any significant change. It was just answering questions about specific details. There's certainly the possibility for significant change, but it's unknown at this time. So our planning efforts are based on the most current version, which is the June 30 version of the Ready Schools Safe Learners. We had our first staff advisory input meeting yesterday, and I want to publicly apologize to Catherine. I neglected to send her the invite. She wanted to participate as an observer, and that got lost by the wayside. So I'll make sure you get one for Friday to be able to observe on that meeting. So I apologize, Catherine. The first chunk of the meeting was a lot like the listening session, so we kind of covered the basic parameters, walked through you know, what's known, what's unknown, reviewed some of the survey information in terms of what the community and what our staff are saying. So there's, you know, nothing new from what you've already heard on that respect. Went into a little bit more detail on and a specialized consideration. So for example, you know, our special programs and the considerations there of how do we provide additional supports to our most vulnerable and students with the highest needs. And so considerations there, they may have longer days than some of the other students. And so we're looking at our capacity and ability to do that. There's no restrictions from that. In fact, that's encouraged, you know, at the state level of that they have you know, there are students that have significantly greater needs that we can look at flexible solutions to address those needs as long as we're following the overall guidelines. Updated them on the tech like I just did you, our transportation model and where we are on that. And so just for your reference, it is, you know, again, with the model that we have to do at this point, half the kids in the morning, half the kids in the afternoon. So the morning group will be transported to school. Obviously, there's a lot of procedural pieces that we have to do and record keeping and contact tracing that is that's still being worked on, and in addition to technology solutions to help with that. Our challenge, or the heavier area, is that middle of the day transition, because the only way we were able to make it work with our transportation capacity is we will be doing pickup and drop off in the same run. Otherwise, it would have taken too long, and it would have been like a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. school day, and teachers working 12 hours. So we believe under the current guidance that we're able to do that. We will need cleaning in between. So essentially what it will likely look like is I'm a morning kid, I get off the bus, a staff member will need to clean that area where that student was, and then the procedure for the afternoon kid to get on the bus. And so, and again, families can sit together, so siblings can sit together. So we feel comfortable with the model. There's still details that we need to work out. We need to identify staff, additional staff to help support that, to make that viable. So Alan has shared that he does have some more driver capacity for the first time in a long time. So that's also how he's able to make that work, just scheduling and route wise. It will be more structured for families, meaning you can't just call up 5 minutes before school and say, hey, can my kid go to the babysitters? Because we do have to track and we do have to monitor the capacity of who's on the bus. So, so it is going to be a little bit more structured with that, with some pretty definitive time cutoffs, so that that can give us the time to make sure that there is space on the bus and that we are able to appropriately track that information. And we're looking at, obviously, there's going to be some additional transportation expenses And I'm asking Andes to provide some initial estimates of how much more time and driving that we're looking at to make this work. Obviously, the big benefit is with the reimbursement rate that, you know, we won't bear the brunt of all of those. It's what 70% will be reimbursed from the state via the federal bus allocation. Food service, what we're real confident with at K School in terms of having the meals brought to the kids in their classrooms. Obviously need to be attentive to specific food needs and allergies as part of that. But doing that, and then when they go home, that we'd send them home with a snack or sacked lunch or snack. So same for the afternoon, I'd arrive at school, I'd get the meal, and then I'd be sent home with a meal. And Jess has said they have some extra cleaning kits because of course kids are going to spill in their classrooms and that sort of thing. So maintenance and custodian department are working on you know, looking at those things as well for the additional needs. Still a little bit of work to do on how that's going to look at the middle school and the high school for the meals. And again, we'll just refer back to the requirements and the guidance. We really wouldn't be able to do the sit down lunches and stuff like we've done in the past. So it'll have to be some variation of that. And then managing the cohort cross exposure and that sort of thing. So that work is forthcoming. Scheduling with custodial, with this model, obviously there's the gap in the middle of the day. And that time would be needed to clean and sterilize before the next group of kids came. So Jess is working with his staff to maximize with the scheduling, like the evening person might come earlier so that we have more people at that middle of the day time. But as I've already shared with the association leadership is we're going to need other people to help with that work. We don't have the capacity for the custodians alone to be able to do that. And so that's part of the discussions. I'm already putting that out there that there's that need. And so right now Jess is working on the schedule so that hopefully by next week we can determine the exact, you know, we're going to need this many more people at that middle time in order to clean to appropriate levels. So with all of these considerations and things that we need to do, I would like to bring to you for consideration thinking about delaying the student start of the school year until after Labor Day. And so let me just walk through this real quick. So right now in the contract, it's stipulated X number of contract days that our staff works. And then it's also defined, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, Dee Dee might have them, of 160X days of student contact. And so the most straightforward would be to essentially reduce student contact days and increase the staff training and professional development days. We could, without union action, take the 2 professional development days that are later in the fall and move them to the start of the year and shift that calendar, but then we wouldn't have any days during the year. And obviously there's a lot of potential for a need for ongoing training. The other option could be is, pay for more days, but that's a significant cost item. And with the broad financial considerations, I would not be recommending that. I believe, I don't know the specific numbers for our district at this point, but my guess is that we're looking at between $30,000 and $50,000 per day to have all the staff on site or working or pay them for a day. So it would be a substantial amount to buy several days, and then you have potential availability issues and that sort of thing. So it would be just staff would start at the same time. If we did a post-Labor Day start, that would gain us 5 days to go through all of the additional training that will be needed for both how we're going to approach the start of school, the social-emotional supports, as well as the huge amount of like protocols and those sorts of things that we have in place. And with the complicated nature of it, this is not just going to be sit and get. This is going to be, we're going to have to walk people around and say, here's how we're going to have to do this. Here's how we're going to have to figure out bathroom use and all that sort of thing. So there will be a significant amount of extra work, and that's why I want to bring that idea to you first, before formally proceeding with the association. So procedurally, it would require an MOU because the days are stipulated in the contract in terms of how many are student and how many are staff days. And so if the board is in favor of the concept, then I would proceed to develop an MOU with the association and then request consideration for a short board meeting next week to be able to formally approve that at the board. So at this moment, the board can't approve it because the union hasn't done their part and had that consideration. But obviously, if there is not support for that idea, it doesn't make sense to follow up with the union on that. So thoughts or questions on that?
So, David, I had a question, and I'm not entirely sure if it even applies this year because we have the hybrid model, which there's the required amount of minutes or hours of student instruction. I'm not sure how that plays out this next year because of what we're working with. So that would, in a normal sense, that would have been one of my first questions. But what does that look like
and that's
now?
a good question. And this state has not acted on that. And the broad consensus is, yeah, that requirement's still out there, but that's pretty low on everyone's list in terms of just figuring out how to get things started. Even without that change, if you looked at it with the traditional time requirements, the 990 hours for high school students, we're not going to make it. There's no way to have kids in class that many hours. And so the vague direction we've gotten from ODE is do the best you can. I feel that taking that extra time will increase the chances for a smooth and strong start and enable us to proceed with fewer hiccups. Where we start the year, we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to continuously revisit what we're doing and how we're doing it, and is it working, and where are the areas where it's not. We really want to start from both with staff and students from a positive supportive place. Is folks are going to forget, folks are going to make mistakes. Little kids, they're constantly reaching out, touching and hugging, and even big kids are wanting to do that. So it's going to be a lot of ongoing work and support, and to help give us the best chance of a strong start. I think it's worth this less than optimal solution because now in the perfect world, no, I don't want to delay the start of school with kids, but I think it's complicated enough where it's worth taking that extra time.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's doing what we can to give the teachers and the staff the time they need to assess what it's going to look like, rather than typically they have this just a couple of days and that's getting classrooms set up.
Right.
That of it itself, it takes time. And so giving yourselves that extra time to be able to discuss everything that is involved will help everybody to start more seamless.
Well, and even just the lesson planning structures, likely the decision hasn't been made yet. That's what the advisory group and the principals and I are going to be working on. But it's likely that we're looking at a different lesson structure. So, traditionally I give my lessons each day to the kids and it's a progression. I might not be seeing, and actually likely won't be seeing that range of kids every day. So I might have the same group at the secondary level for a week or two to do a whole sequence of lessons in a real concentrated way to address the same amount of material that might take me a quarter or a semester in a more intensive but shorter time frame. And so we're looking at some different instructional models like that are going to take some time to plan, and have the teachers have time to get ready for that. So my intent would be to have a model of essentially like 2 of the days would be for staff to work on those parts of it, and then 3 of the days would be district directive, meaning here's the trainings that
you made a big mess in that bedroom. I want you to go clean it up.
Did I just get in trouble from Jenice?
Yeah,
Oh man, I'm sorry.
no, I agree. It sounds like just the task of kind of getting things going and getting staff the time, to ingest it all and learn it as best we can. It's still going to be a short, heavy lift, I'm sure, to get all these procedures down in just a few days. But No, I'm in favor of, making that change, or at least try to feel that out and see how it might shake out with the staff.
So, so my question is, am I okay with it? Okay, we support the idea, move ahead with having the discussion about the MOU.
Do
I
we
think
need
so.
a promotion?
Jay?
Yeah,
No, not at this point, I would say.
No, I don't
This
think
is
we need
more
formal-
just, you're okay with the concept, because obviously if you were going to say, for whatever reason, saying, no, we really don't feel comfortable with this, then it just stops. Then there wouldn't be any need to follow up with the association and have those discussions. And so that's why I wanted to bring it to you first, just to help keep it moving along at as quick a pace as we can, because obviously once that decision's made, we'll want to get that out to the community as soon as possible in as many ways as possible. And same with the decision about needing to do the rotating schedule. Those are the key pieces that it's essential for our community to know, so that they can start to adjust their plans and figure out for their own personal situations. And lastly, and I certainly didn't intend to almost forget, is a big need in the community as well as with our staff is going to be with childcare. As long as we have to do this model, that's going to be huge. And so that's going to be a priority. I've recalled the administrators are coming back tomorrow, so we're meeting all day and Friday and probably more. But certainly started. They're coming back tomorrow, and then on Friday, part of the day will be the planning meeting at the individual building level with the advisory groups. So that will be part of our work as well, is looking to identify what can we do as a district to support that, and how can we indirectly support and facilitate it. And so there's some questions. I think ideas have come up, like we had was it the Bruin Cubs, or there was some sort of program in place in the past that I've heard about, where our high school students could earn credits for that. And so it's like, could we do that under the current rules, and how would that look, and how could we make that as available as possible? Also is just working with the different folks in town, faith-based groups, different nonprofit organizations, as well as existing childcare providers, to see, how can we leverage anything? Are there grants, that sort of thing? So that's going to be a pretty high priority and focus, right away, and it's huge potential for a win to any that we can expand the accessibility and availability of childcare. And lastly, and then I'll shut up, I apologize for talking so long, is with the full distance education option. That's another priority. We feel that we need to, on some level, be able to offer that from the outset. There's a lot of growth that we need to do in that area, a lot of figuring out, but that there's a concern that we may lose a significant amount of families and students who opt to just do full online elsewhere. I think that over time we can end up doing a really good job with that, and then maintain the local connection as well as the local enrollment. We have not, as of yet, had a significant amount of requests for enrollment in online institutions, but that's certainly a question and a concern. But it parallels with the requirement of, we're required to have some plan for distance ed anyway, just because of the possible eventuality of a temporary shutdown. The goal and the hope would be a short-term one, but we need to have a plan in place, and obviously it makes sense to, should that happen, that it would be a more easy transition. So, so that's very big in our radar, and we're going to be reaching out directly to families to get some more detailed information on that, as well as what are their plans. I've directed the principals that if they get an initial request for enrollment there, that they reach out to the families and ask them, saying, to try and determine what's driving that decision, and if we were able to offer a full distance ed solution, would they participate in ours and not necessarily transfer to that fully online institution. So I believe that a quick conversation with Deanne today is that she had one of those conversations with the high school family, and they said, well, yeah, if you can do this, we'll stay. We're happy to do that. And so was able to have, a little small win of retaining that student and that family and successfully meeting their needs. So that's another big piece that's on the radar, and using our lessons learned from spring, of which there were plenty, to help inform how we approach that moving forward. So I think that's about all that I have. And so are there any questions or comments or concerns about any of that?
I would just like to let you know that I am fine with delaying the start of school for the students.
I as well. I think it's going to have, you know, obviously you guys we're trying to dial through logistics that are fairly unknown right now.
Very much, yeah.
Having the opportunity to get everything dialed in so that teachers are confident when kids arrive, so that anxiety level is going to be lowered a little bit on some level, and it's not going to beat each other head to head, will be a vital onset to the school year.
Good point. Yeah.
So I definitely support that. And also the online option, getting that geared up and ready to go to
Yes.
retain as many kids within our district, and with the relationship with the online platforms and keeping in loop with the district. And I think that's all really healthy things that, for all we know, may be our forever stance. And so,
yeah, I would agree of, you know, even vaccine future, and you can go back to somewhat normal is, you know, my hope and goal is that we're not going to go back to exactly the way that we were before. And that we will gain and have some more strengths that we didn't have before. And I would hope, you know, maybe even, and this is, you know, wishful thinking, but it's the vision of even recapturing some of the previously lost enrollment.
correct.
By offering them some meaningful online. But see, what we can do that, you know, full online schools can't is, yeah, why don't you come in for band and you can do the rest of your day online. And so that can really help maintain that connection and connection to the community and connection to the district. So I think there's some exciting potential there. I know the principals have already had teachers approach them saying that they're interested in that. So it's just the mechanics of how we approach that. And there's any number of ways, like staffing wise, that we do that, but having that be a built-in part of what we offer. So that is a priority. We're going to start as soon as folks are back. One of the big things is just looking at different learning management systems. I wouldn't intend to start off with, because you can buy canned curriculum. That's what a lot of these online outfits do, is they're just buying a package. But Google Class is decent, but it's not very robust, and there's a lot of manual work that needs to be done to make that work. It doesn't integrate with our student information systems. So like if you build a class in one place, teachers still have to create their class in Google Class. So it's worth looking at and really doing a detailed pilot of the different learning management systems to help support that move towards being able to offer online. So that'll be the immediate steps, in addition to figuring out how we can provide at least a basic offering to start off with.
I want to just add that I think it's really good that we're looking at how realistic it is that we need to have an online robust income, not income.
Well, it can go to that.
I mean, it would be great if we had that, but no, I know that we don't know what the normal is, and it's so unpredictable. So being able to have something that is seamless, I think, is not just for families who want to be online, but also the importance of, if we have to go to shut down, that we have something in place that students can transition into in a somewhat seamless way, so there's not as much interruption. That would be very ideal.
Yep,
in
that's
terms
our
of
target.
looking at this long term, because I suspect that it's going to be a while before outbreaks is something that's not occurring. That's not over our heads. So
Not only that, but economically, we may see more of our high school level youth needing to go to get jobs to support family
Right.
during this time when others are having to divvy up more for daycare or lose hours because of daycare, things of that nature. We may have lost students because they just had to help support the family.
Mm-hmm.
But having that option is going to be
Give them an option.
a real game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you.
No shortage of tasks ahead of you.
Sorry if I was long-winded.
No, it's all good stuff. I'm sure you left out 95% of it, right? Okay. So, any questions or comments then on the next item, the finance report? Okay. And moving along here to the action items. We have a list of second reading of board policies, a number of them. We looked at those last month and again this time. So I would entertain a motion to approve the second reading of these listed policies.
I'll move to approve the second reading of these listed policies.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on these policies? Okay. Go around the horn here then. Jay.
Aye.
Jenice. You're muted. Looks like you said aye.
Aye.
There we go. Thank you. Janelle.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
Okay, and aye as well. Next action item is approval for the Brookings Harbor School District Comprehensive Suicide Plan that was included in our packet.
I move to approve the Brookings Harbor Comprehensive Suicide Plan.
A second.
Okay. Discussion? Questions on it?
Very well written.
Yeah.
And something I think that would also be helpful to include in this, staff updates when they come back, is for them to be aware of this plan.
Sure.
So that we can make sure that we're actually implementing it.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead and call for a vote. Jay.
Aye.
Jenice.
Aye.
Janelle.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
Okay, and aye as well. Thank you. Finally, in the action items, approval of the resolution of the Brookings Harbor School District Board of Directors condemning racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district. So included in our packet this month is a resolution of anti-racism. Maybe I might ask Jay, would you maybe read it? Just so we can all have it out, or do you have it?
I don't have it in front of me.
I have it right here.
Well, Jenice, then, how about, would you mind kind of reading it out loud, just kind of so we can all hear it?
Not at all. Whereas the Brookings Harbor School Board stands for social justice for our Black and other marginalized communities in Brookings Harbor. Centuries of violence and oppression and the recent murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery.
I think we had the old version. The original version?
Pardon?
Is that the original version, or is that the one in the packet?
It's the one in the packet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's the most current version, though.
And they pull
Okay,
up.
well, the one in the packet. Adopted this 15th day of July, 2020. So
Yeah,
does
look
someone else have the more recent one?
I'm looking at the packet. I guess I'm looking the same one you are, Jenice. Where's actually I know. See, you sent it out too, David, right? There it is.
Yeah, if it's the wrong one, then I probably sent the wrong version to DE. So that would have been my fault. Let me grab.
Yeah, so the version, David, that you sent out via email is slightly different. I think the one Jenice was reading was probably the original version that got included in the packet. So how should we procedurally handle this? So the one I believe want to adopt is not in the packet. Can we read it out loud and adopt it in that manner?
Or do you want to, if you read it and then consider adopting it if we have a meeting next week to take care of some other items anyway? Is that an option?
Yes, Alan and I would agree with that.
Yeah, since you didn't have it in the official one in the official packet, I think maybe we ought to hold off in the official adoption.
We can vote to table this so that and add it to the agenda next week so that it gets out.
Yeah, I want to make sure that's proper.
The proper, whichever one was needed to be in there is released to the public for them given time to read.
Yes. So
do you have it available to read right now, Alan
I do,
or David?
I do, but let's real quick here. Let's I like your suggestion, Catherine. So I would listen to let's have a motion here to table this topic to our next board meeting, and then I'll go ahead.
Can I just interrupt before you vote on that? You really don't have to do that. I mean, we make ordinance changes and resolution changes all the time. The topic was noticed. There's no reason that it has to be perfect when it gets to your meeting. But anyway, if you want to delay, that's fine. It's just that this is one that's nice to kind of actually make a stand and actually vote on it. But anyway, well, I think Dee Dee was going to jump in and tell you the same thing, but
I will. And I need to apologize because I did pull the wrong one. David sent me the correct one.
Okay. So do you think is it proper then, Dee Dee, in your opinion, as well? Can we maybe just read the correct version out loud and adopt it here tonight?
So, Alan, I think that we could, but I think the intent is that we want this to be, to me, this is so important that giving the public the opportunity to read what we're going to be voting on prior to voting, I think is a better way of going about this. Procedurally, sure, we could do that, but I think this needs to be honored in a way that's saying, okay, we're going to be intentional about this and not just change it, because there may be somebody that reads the other one that will have some sort of comment. I don't know. But
well, let's do that. Let's make it kind of as formal as we can then. So let's table it tonight, and like I say, it sounds like we may have a quick board meeting the next week or so, some other topics, so we can include it in the next one. But I will read it here in a moment once we kind of formally table this approval then.
Okay, I make a motion to table approval of resolution of the Brookings Harbor Director condemning racism and commitment to next week, to our next meeting. I guess next meeting would be a better way of putting that.
A second.
Okay, any other discussion on that real quick? All right, let's vote on that then. Jay?
Aye.
Jenice?
Aye.
Janelle?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Okay, and I as well. So we'll put that off till next meeting, and I'll go ahead and read. I believe I pulled up the correct version here, and I'll read it for the record's sake, and we can hear it and then read it again next time. But so resolution. Whereas the Brookings Harbor School Board stands for social justice and equity for youth of all ethnicities and backgrounds, and whereas the Brookings Harbor School District embraces and encourages a diverse educational culture, and whereas the Brookings Harbor School District recognizes the importance of understanding implicit bias and how it can impact decision-making and are dedicated to not allowing that to occur, and whereas leaders will make a priority to budget for ongoing training with intention to eradicate these injustices from occurring in our district. And whereas as leaders, we recognize that we are role models for youth, district employees in the community, and will act in a manner that reflects commitments within this resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved on this 15th day of June 2020 by the Board of the Brookings Harbor School District that the district condemns and will not tolerate racism, racial violence, hate speech, and bigotry in all forms. And the district will work actively to dismantle any form of racism through a review of policies, practices, and district cultural norms. And the district affirms the value and importance of culturally responsive pedagogy and instructional practices that represent the diversity of our community. And the district believes that having a diverse faculty and staff reflective of the demographics of our students provides significant value to all students regardless of color, creed, religious beliefs, and gender identity and will continue to work towards a more diverse workforce. So that was the intended version.
Much better than the other one.
Okay. So item number 6, board functions and comments. The note here, just if anyone had any takeaways from the July 11th OSBA virtual conference. I myself did not attend any of the sessions, but I heard some good things about a couple of them. And just wonder if there's any comments about that from the group here tonight.
I thought go ahead, Jenice.
I'm sorry. I attended the full session, and it was week T, but it, I chose the things that were going on right now, the how to return to school and the sports thing, and I'm drawing a blank right now, but it was everything that I heard strengthened me, and I appreciated it. I was glad I attended, but I just felt like it wasn't sufficient.
Really? Yeah, there's a session, I can't remember who told me, if it was Steve Kelly or maybe even David, that particularly about the Ready, Set, Learning kind of rules and regulations, and Colt Gill spoke, and I heard there's some interesting things in that. But again, I didn't attend it.
Yeah, I think what I got most out of it was listening to Colt Gill, and also the OSA board person who also, I can't think it's board, or his individual who spoke regarding sports, just so we could get a sense of what's going on. The thing that stood out to me, and I haven't heard anything. I've been trying to keep track of this next special session that they're looking at, but the liability issues around COVID-19, and if somebody contracts it at the school district, through the school district, that didn't seem like there had been any movement in that area of protecting school districts, if they've done everything that they can, follow the guidelines. So that was something that really stood out to me, as we follow all the guidelines, and we don't want anything horrific to happen, but it could, I was thinking of smaller school districts, several lawsuits, and it could just eliminate their budget. And
even bigger ones.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Even big ones. So just, I don't like thinking in this mindset. It's a tough balance between, okay, we need to make sure that we protect our staff, we protect our students, and that directly protects our community, because we are, a 1,500 hub of individuals that all come together, 1,500 individuals. And I know we're looking at splitting that up, but just being mindful of what, had me be mindful of that. If there's things that we can teeter towards being more cautious, that would be an extra level of precaution that we could take. Just really weighed how heavy this is. And I know there's not easy answers, because we need our kids back in school. That's social emotional part of that is so critical. So.
Well, and Catherine, that is an ongoing topic at the superintendent's meetings, and Colt talks there as well. And there's a lot of coordinated, for lack of a term, pressure on the governor's office to come up with some type of limited liability. So I think that at least that's a possibility to come out of the special session. So it is very much on everyone's radar, and that's when push comes to shove, it's just like, okay, how can we really do this if you don't have at least some limited liability? So I'm optimistic that there will be something in place to help us start the school year.
Okay, that's good to hear. And at the same time, knowing that we're going to,
Yes.
them turning it back to local control, that gives us the ability to make decisions to do, more than less, to protect. So it's a combination of a lot of different things that I got out of that So thank you. I thought I heard that they were going to work on it, but I hadn't heard any updates. So.
Okay. Okay, appreciate that. Item 7, key dates and calendar updates. We have July 25th. And that's a Saturday coming up in a couple weeks. And that was our intended full day time with Steve Kelly. Given COVID and given some travel restrictions that Steve has within his organization, he's not going to be able to be here in person. So I think I shared this already, but to reiterate, he suggested a little more of a truncated version virtually that same day. So I went ahead and gave him the thumbs up. Let's go ahead and look at doing that. So he had a couple topics that he wanted to stress, centered around communication with superintendent evaluation process. Were the two big ones that jumped to mind. So let's go ahead and keep that on our calendars. And it's going to be, I think he said, a 3 or 4 hour kind of session, so more of a half day to kind of get the 2 or 3 big topics addressed and talked about that are pretty critical for our new crew here going forward. So
it's going to be on the computer and not in person. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a virtual thing. So I don't have a start time yet, so I haven't talked that level of detail with him, but I'm sure that'll be coming up soon. So hold the phone there. Okay, that's our last item. Unless I got any other questions or discussions, I think then I will thank you for your time once again and adjourn this meeting. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good evening.